In this video, I'll be going over questions 11 through 15, starting with question number 11. Write 0.932 as a fraction. So the important thing about turning decimals into fractions, you look at the last number and decide what place that number is in. So I'm going to write the number here. So the 9 is in the 10th place. The 3 is in the 100th place. And the 2 is in the 1000th place. And since that 2 is in the 1000th place, that means that the denominator is going to be 1000. So I'll put 1000 here. All right, and then I just put the number in the numerator. And once I get to this, I need to check to see if I can simplify this. And I know that I can simplify it. I'm going to try 4. 4 seems to be the magic number for most of the questions here. I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 4. So we're going to start with the numerator, dividing that by 4. 4 can go into 9 2 times. 2 times 4 is 9. 9 minus 8 is 1. I'm going to bring the 3 down. 4 can go into 13 3 times. And 3 times 4 is 12. And I'm going to bring, and 13 minus 12 is 1. Now I'm going to bring the 2 down. 4 can go into 12 3 times. So the numerator is going to be 233. So let me erase this. So the numerator, once we simplify it with the 4, is going to be 233. So I can stop here. Actually, no, I can't, because we need to take care of the bottom. There's 2 answers with the numerator with 233. So I'm going to go ahead and divide 1000 by 4. So 4 divided by 4 can't go into 1. So I move to the next number. 4 can go into 10 2 times. And 2 times 4 is 8. And 10 minus 8 is 2. I bring the 0 down. 4 can go into 20 5 times. Give us 20. And 20 minus 20 is 0. And then I bring that 0 down, and 4 goes into 0 0 times. So that means my denominator is 250, leaving me with this as the answer. Question number 12, a word problem. When doing these word problems, I always recommend that you read through the word problem first, and then the second time you read through the word problem, then you take your notes. So Oscar ordered food delivery for his family dinner. The total of the order was $122.19. If he was charged a 7% service fee and gave a 15% tip on the bill after the service fee, what was the total of this order? So I want to hone in on this because that's going to play a big part in figuring out the final answer. So with the first thing I need to do is figure out how much it cost the 7% service fee. So to do that, I'm going to turn 7%, going to turn that into a decimal. And I know that 7% as a decimal, I know that I eliminate the percentage and I take 1, 2, put a decimal there, and then I put a 0 there. So 7% as a decimal is 0.07. Let me write that again. Write that 0 again. That looks terrible. All right, so we know that. And let's turn that 15% into a decimal too. That way I'm going to do the same thing. Get rid of the percentage. 1, 2, put the decimal there. Oh, excuse me. No 0, it's just 0.15. So 15% as a decimal is 0.15. All right, now that I turned my percentages into decimals, now I can start doing some multiplication because that's what needs to be done to solve this problem. So we're going to start with the total order of the bill before the service fee and the tip. So we have 122.19 times, and we're going to do the service fee for first, 0.07. All right, let's do the multiplication. 9 times 7 is 63. We carry the 6. 7 times 1 is 7, plus the 6 that I carried is 13. Carry the 1. 7 times 2 is 14, plus the 1 that I carried, that's 15. Carry the 1. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15. Carry the 1. 7 times 1 is 7, plus the 1 that I carried is 8. All right, so now that I can multiply that 0 times the top number, and I'll do that just to show you that there is some multiplication that goes on after you get that first. You take care of the ones place. So 0 times 9 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0, 0 times 2 is 0, 0 times 2 is 0, 0 times 1 is 0. So I'm going to add those two numbers. It's going to be pretty easy to add those two numbers. It's just the same number. All right, now that, let me get rid of that decimal point because that doesn't go there. All right, now that I have my number, after I multiply, I have to count how many numbers are behind the decimal place for the top number and the bottom number. So I have 19 up at the top, so that's 2 numbers. And then at the bottom, I have 0.07, so that's 2 more numbers. So I am going to rewrite that number without the decimal. Now I'm going to put the decimal point in there. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and that gives us 8.55. So we don't need the last two. So the service fee was $8.55. All right, I know it's $8.55. So I'm going to go ahead and put that, get rid of that. So we know that that was $8.55. All right, so now that I know that number, I'm going to add that to my total bill. So 122.19, and it's important to line your decimals up when you're adding and subtracting decimals. So 9 plus 5 is 14. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Plus 5 is 7. I can put my decimal point there. 2 plus 8 is 10. I carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, and 1 plus 0. So at this point, before the tip is factored in, it's $130.74. So what I'm going to do with that number is I'm actually going to multiply that 15% tip to that amount because, as I stated before, this part right here is very important. So now I have to multiply this $130.74 by 15%. So we're going to write it here, 0.74. I'm going to get rid of this down here because I need that space. And I'm going to multiply that times 0.15. All right, so we know that 5 times 4 is 20. We carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 2 is 7. 37, excuse me. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 3, 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. All right, we're going to move to the tens place, or we're going to multiply the 1 times the top number. And when we do that, since we're moving into the tens place, so to speak, we have to put a 0 in the ones place. After we do that, then we can start multiplying the tens place in the bottom number times the top number. So 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 7 is 7. 1 times 0 is 0. And so that we don't get confused with those numbers I put up there. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. All right, now I do my addition. So I have 0. 7 plus 4 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 7. Or excuse me, 1 plus 3 is 4, plus 7. 4 plus 7 is 11. 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 plus 0 is 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. And then 0 plus 1 is 1. So again, to find out where to place the decimal point, we want to count how many numbers are behind the decimal point in both numbers. So we have 2 at the top and 2 in the bottom number. So that's 4. So we're going to go here. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so the tip is $19.61. Let me go ahead and erase this. All right, so we have the number 122 plus 19, that's going to be $130.73. And we know that the tip is $19.61. Or excuse me, 74 cents. It was 74, not 73. All right, we add those two numbers. 4 plus 1 is 5. 7 plus 6 is 13. Carry the 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then 1 plus 0 is 1. And we just put our decimal point there. So that means that this is the answer. All right, question number 13. An emergency room patient's heart rate dropped 30% to 63 beats per minute. What was the patient's heart rate before the drop in beats per minute? So anytime I have a word problem, I always read through the word problem first. Then the second time I read through it, I start making my notes. So I see that I'm going to have to find out what the person's original heart rate was. And when you start dealing with percentages and parts of the percent or parts of a number, you have to use a particular equation. And that equation is you take the whole times the percent, and this percent has to be in decimals. And that equals the part. So what numbers do I have from this equation to solve whatever the original beats per minute was? So I have the percentage, sort of, and I have the part. So I need to figure out what that whole number is, or what the whole is. And to do that, I need to get whole on the side by itself. So I'm going to divide each side by percent. And the percent cancels out on this side. So whole equals, so whole equals part divided by percent. But that percent is going to be in a decimal. That looks like a 90, and it shouldn't look like a 90. Sorry, my penmanship is terrible. So that's percent. Just know that that's percent right there. So whole equals part divided by the percent, but the percent is going to be in decimals. So let's go ahead and plug in our numbers, see what we come up with. All right, but before we plug in that percent, it does tell us that the heart rate dropped. So we need to figure out what the percent is to use. So we take 100% and subtract 30 from it. That gives us 70%. But since using that equation, this percent needs to be put into, it has to be placed into decimal form. So 70% as a decimal equals 0.70. All right, so that's what we're going to use for our equation, so we can figure out what the patient's original heart rate was. All right, so we know whole equals, I'm going to put W equals the part divided by the percent in decimal. I guess I can write that out. Whole equals 63 divided by 0.70. So I'm going to do the math now. I need to erase this so I have enough space to do the math problem. So 0.70, we have 63. So we're going to just turn this, we're going to divide 70, and this decimal point will come into play afterwards. 70 divided by 6, you can't do it. 70 divided by 63, you can't do it. So you need to add 0. And when you add that first 0, you have to put a decimal up at the top. 70 can go into 630. That can go into 639 times. So 9 times 70 is 630. We subtract 630 from 630. That gives us a big 0. So that would equal 0.90. But since we have this decimal here, we need to move this decimal in the answer over 2 places. So 1, 2, put the decimal right there, and we have to put a 0 there. So it looks like the patient's original heart rate was 90 beats per minute. All right, and question number 14. is a word problem. Again, you always want to read through the word problem first. Then the second time you read through the word problem, you take your notes. Question number 14 says an event coordinator has a budget of $680 if she spent $75 on balloons and $65 on invitations. What percent of her budget is left? All right, so let's figure out how much did she spend total. So we're going to start off with 680, and we know she spent $75 on balloons. So we're going to subtract 75 from 680. You can't subtract 0 from 5, so you have to take 1 from there, put a 7 there. That becomes a 10. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 7 minus 7 is 0. 6 minus 0 is 6. All right, so we know how much she has left after she purchased the balloons. Next, we need to find out how much did she have after purchasing those invitations. So we take 605, we subtract that. All right, and sorry, that is a 6. That looks terrible. That's a 6. All right, so 5 minus 5 is 0. 0 minus 6 you can't do, so you have to take 1 from here. That becomes a 5. That becomes a 10. So 10 minus 6 is 4. And 5 minus 0 is 5. So after it's all said and done, she has $540 left. So what is that percent? So in the previous question, let me write 540 here so I don't forget that. All right, so in the previous question where we used some percentages, we used whole times percent, and that's in decimals, equals part. So based off of this, we know what the whole number is. That's that. We know the part is 540. So to figure out what the percent is left, we have to divide both sides by the whole. Over here. And that cancels out on that side. So it looks like percent equals part over whole. So that's the equation I am going to use. But that percent is going to end up being a decimal. But we can figure out what it is once we get the decimal. We can figure out what the percent is. So again, percent equals the part, which is 540, divided by $680. All right, so we're going to do the math now. So it's going to be a long math problem. Probably should have made this a little bit smaller because I need all that room on the right-hand side. So we're going to make that 5, give myself a little bit more room, $680. So let's go ahead and do the math. 540. And I'm going to erase this to eliminate those arrows and confusion. All right, can 680 go into 5? No. 680 can't go into 54. 680 can't go into 540. So what we do is we need to add a 0. And when we add that first 0, we need to put a percent sign or a decimal right before that first 0 up top. All right, how many times can 680 go into 540? So let's try 77. We're going to try 7. And that would be 0. 7 times 8 is 56. Carry the 1. 7 times 6 is 42 plus 7. 42 plus 7 is 47. So that's 4,760. If I added another 680, that would be too big. So that would be 7. Actually, I can probably just stop the problem here because there's only one problem here that has 70 as part of the percent. All right, so we're going to subtract 540 from, or 5,400 minus 4,760. 0, 0 minus 6 can't do, so we need to take 3, 1 from there. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 3 minus 7 can't do, so we need to take 1 from there. That becomes 4. 13 minus 7 is 6. All right, so that's 640. And let me erase all of those numbers up there. All right, so can 640 go into 680 going to 640? No. And I always tell my students, anytime you get a decimal, you always want to get at least 2 numbers after the decimal. So we have 1 right now, but we want to get another number. So to do that, we need to bring a 0 down. So we need to add a 0 here, and we need to bring that 0 down. So that becomes 6,400. How many times can 680 go into 6,400? So let's figure it out. So we know 7 times 680 is 4,760. So I'm going to try 8. 680 times 8. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 8 is 64. Carry the 1. 8 times 6, 48. Plus 6 is 5,440. Got another one. You can not add another one. Can you add another one? I think you can add another one. Let's do 680 times 9. So we're going to try to add another 680 into there. So let's do 680 times 9. All right, 9 times 0 is 0. 9 times 8 is 72. Carry the 1. 9 times 6 is 54. Plus 7 is 61. So yeah, you could add another 680, and that's closer to 6,400. So 79. So we can actually stop here because we have 0.79. I could go another step. I usually tell my students to get 2 numbers after the decimal, but I'm pretty close to the answer that I want to see. So let's do this. We need to turn that answer we got, that 0.79, into a percent. And to do that, you get rid of that decimal point, you move it over to the right 2 times, put the decimal point there, or yeah, put the decimal point there, that becomes a percent. So 79% is left over. So our answer is 79.4%. And we could have gone a little bit further, but I didn't think it was necessary since there was no other one besides 79.4%. All right, question number 15 says, order the following fractions from least to greatest. I know that those negative numbers are going to be on the least side, but I'm not sure about the positive number. So the easiest way to find out is to put all of these numbers into decimals. That's the easiest way. I can't just look at these fractions and tell whether or not one fraction is larger than the other, besides the fact that some of them are negative and some of them are positive. So we're going to start with negative 5 over 6. So to put any fraction, you make any fraction into a decimal, regardless of what number is the largest, the denominator always goes on the outside, and we have to do some division in this. So The denominator is going to go on the outside. The numerator goes on the inside. All right, and then we just do our division. So 6 can't go into 5 evenly or equally. So we need to add a 0, and when we add that first 0, we need to put a decimal point up at the top. 6 can go into 50 8 times. 8 times 6 is 48. We subtract 48 from 50, that gives us 2. I always tell my students, get 2 numbers after the decimal, at least 2 numbers after the decimal. So 6 can't go into 2, so we add another 0, we bring that 0 down, so it becomes 20, and 6 can go into 20 3 times, and we can stop with that right now. So we know that negative 5, 6 is equal to negative point, I don't want that to look like a division sign there, so negative 0.83. All right, 5, 6 is equal to negative 0.83. All right, we're going to move on to the next fraction to figure out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do the next one. So 1 over 6. So we do the same thing. 1 over 6. So regardless of what number is largest, denominator goes on the outside, numerator goes on the inside. 6 can't go into 1, but we can add a 0, and when we add that first 0, we put a decimal point up at the top. 6 can go into 10 one time, and 1 times 6 is 6. So we subtract 6 from 10, that gives us 4. We want to get at least 2 numbers after the decimal place. So we add another 0 because 6 can't go into 4. We bring that 0 down, that becomes 40. And 6 can go into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. So we are good with that number. So we know that 1/6 is 0.16. And negative 5, 6 is 0.083. All right, so let's move on to the next fraction that we're going to turn into a decimal. All right, the next fraction we're going to turn into a decimal is 1 over 2. Again, regardless of what number is largest, 2 goes on the outside, the denominator goes on the inside, the numerator goes on the inside. So 2 is on the outside, 1 is on the inside. 2 can't go into 1, so we add another 0. When we add that 0, we put our decimal point up at the top. And 2 can go into 10 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10. And we want to get at least 2 numbers after the decimal. 2 goes into 0 times. So we know that 1 over 2, or 1/2, is 0.50. All right, and then for the last fraction, we have negative 1 over 9. Again, regardless of what number is largest, the denominator goes on the outside, numerator goes on the inside. 9 can't go into 1. Let me erase those right there. Still see some decimal points there. So we add a 0, and when we add that 0, put a decimal point there. So 9 goes into 10 one time. 1 times 9 is 9. We subtract 9 from 10, gives us 1. We want to get at least 2 numbers after the decimal. So we add another 0, bring that down. 9 can go into 10 one time. And it's just going to keep going on and on. So we have negative 0.11. All right, so now let's put them in order now. So I'm going to write my numbers a little bit legible down here. So The first number is negative 0.83. Second number is 0.16. Those two numbers, I'm going to erase those. 1 over 2 is 0.50. And negative 1 over 9 is negative 0.11. All right, so we need to order these from least to greatest. So the smallest number is going to be negative 0.83, followed by negative 0.11, followed by 0.16, followed by 0.50. So that is the answer right there. That is the order you want to put those in.